Hello everyone, I'm Adrian Chandler, Artistic Director of La Serenissima, and Presto Classical have asked me to answer some questions about the forthcoming release of our album Extra Time, coming out in July. Question number one. The simple concept behind this album, we couldn't fit everything that we wanted into our last album, so we just made another one, seems so obvious, and rooted in pure enthusiasm for the music, yet it's rare for this to be acknowledged as openly as you have here. Why do you think people don't embrace this approach more often? Well, I think it's understandable that people have a sort of concept with which they when they make a disc or a recording, whatever you want to call it these days. I think it's quite important that you need a concept before you actually go into the recording studio. I always try and have a theme for La Serenissima's recordings. Some people just go in and record an entire opus collection of a certain composer. But this disc is a little bit different because it was none of it was really planned. It's just brilliant music. So, why not? I'm sure we'll do it again. Would it have been unusual for the Antonio Mateus ballet-derived pieces on this album to have been performed by themselves as standalone concert items in the Baroque era? Or would they have only existed within the context of their respective parent works? The thing with Italian ballet music of this era is most of it doesn't survive. If you look at taking Vivaldi for instance, if you look at records that survive for Vivaldi operas, very often you can find exactly who sang in the operas and who did the stage design. For instance, Canaletto, one of his early jobs was working with his dad on Vivaldi operas, stage design for Vivaldi operas, and often with Vivaldi operas you can find choreographers as well. And it's interesting, therefore, that hardly any ballet music for Vivaldi operas survives. So it was so common that for the ballet music, like the Mateus items, was composed by a different composer. It had just been chucked in the bin at the end of the show, pretty much. So would they have been played? Probably not, I don't think. The Mateus items are slightly different in that because they were written for the Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI, who was a massive musicophile. He just loved music, particularly sort of loud trumpet stuff. Hence the four trumpets that feature in both the ballets on this suite on this disc. Probably not, but who knows? The emperor might have requested, could he have a certain ballet played for him in private? Don't know. I expect we will never know. Next question. We often tend to think of England of this time as more of an importer of musical styles than an exporter, yet you allude to Purcell having had an influence on Mateus's writing. Is there any evidence that elements of the English Baroque style actually took root on the continent more generally? Well, yes, there is. First of all, it's important to say that Purcell had a massive influence on Mateus's writing because Mateus, half English, half Italian, grew up in Purcell's London, and certainly his father knew Purcell. Telemann, when Telemann is talking about the mixed taste as sort of a melting pot of all the sort of European styles, one of the styles that Telemann talks about is the English style. So we know Telemann was aware of it. Interestingly, Brescianello, another one of the composers that features on this disc, I have just finished editing all 6 of Brescianello's orchestral suites and I think it's the C major suite that has a hornpipe in it. I've never seen an Italian composer writing a hornpipe before, but I mean, if that's not English, don't know what is. So yes, I mean, I think the English style had more of an influence on the continent than we perhaps give them credit for. Also, Vivaldi, when he was writing for the viol, Vivaldi called the viol a viola all'inglese, an English viola. Possibly this is because Vivaldi was aware that the English had written huge amounts of very, very fine, but by Vivaldi's time, quite outdated viol music. So maybe Vivaldi was alluding to that there as well. Next question. One of the expected delights of The Godfather was the Brescianello double concerto for bassoon and violin, and this relatively obscure composer makes a return appearance here with a violin concerto. How did you first come across Brescianello's music? What do you think makes it so special? Well, I can't really remember how I came across. I mean, I come across composers sort of by accident, while sort of rooting about for something else. But he's brilliant. He's just brilliant. It's very, very, very Vivaldian, yet he has a sort of German approach to harmony that Vivaldi doesn't have. It's unsurprising, given that from the early 1710s he had been in the employ of the Electress of Bavaria, who was exiled in Venice at that point. He then, after the peace treaty at the end of the Spanish Wars of Succession was signed, Brescianello went back to Munich with the Electress, and then shortly afterwards left Munich to go and take up the reins of Kapellmeister at the court of Würzburg in Germany, near Stuttgart. So it's unsurprising that there are German elements, but it's very, very joyful music. It's full of energy, like you find in Vivaldi, and the slow movements are exquisite, really, really beautiful. Next question. It seems common for Italian concerti and orchestral works from this period to have subtitles, as 3 of the works featured on this album do, linking to operas, feast days, or famous dedicatees. Why do you think composers tended to place the topic of a piece so prominently during this period? Well, I don't think that they really did. I think Vivaldi is relatively unusual in this respect. You do occasionally find the odd title of a Locatelli, for instance, occasionally did it. And it's certainly true that in the previous century, in the 17th century, Italian composers really did. There was a massive vogue for giving your sonatas titles, but it was certainly not as common by Vivaldi's day. For the C major concerto by Vivaldi, for instance, that is dedicated to the Holy Roman Emperor. If I was writing a concerto for the Holy Roman Emperor, I think I'd probably state that on the title as well. I mean, it's a feather in Vivaldi's cap, so why not? In terms of something like the concerto for the Feast of St. Lawrence, again, Vivaldi seems to have left us a handful of concertos that were written for religious feast days. And again, if you're doing that, why not? It may also have been the fact that it was a prestigious event that where this concerto was being performed for the first time. So again, maybe it's Vivaldi just saying, "Hey guys, this is what I've been doing. I've been writing for the Holy Roman Emperor. I've been writing for this very important church here, having my works performed all over the place." So there you go. Final question. As any football fan will know, perhaps particularly those who follow England, extra time need not be the end of the match. there's always the prospect of the dreaded penalty shootout. Despite the resplendent finale of this album, do you think there might be scope for a further album of ones that still got away? Or has this avenue of exploration definitely come to a conclusion for now? Well, absolutely. Well, maybe they'll, give us a few years and there'll be a penalty shootout disc on the way. The thing is, because I'm quite pragmatic chap, if we finish a bunch of recording sessions with half an hour left over, you've paid the musicians for that half hour. Why not see if you can get some stuff down? Funnily enough, back in February, when we still could play together, we made a disc that will be coming out next February called Settecento, and it's a chamber album, and we put down a trio sonata by Caldara at the end of those sessions. Haven't heard it yet, don't know if it's usable, but the other thing is, I actually, for instance, the Vivaldi Concerto for the Feast of St. Lawrence on Extra Time, we did it in 27 minutes. I'd never be able to do that in a normal sort of recording scenario, because if you go, well, we'll just see how it goes, you never know. You kind of throw caution to the wind, and I think possibly you get better results, but I didn't say that. Because everybody's just going, hey, we've done what we've come to do. Now let's have a bit of fun and play some really great music. And buy the album and see for yourselves. Cheers.